Simon, welcome. Your perspective today, not least of all, kind of a tale of two maybe parts to the release.
Yeah.
The hours worked is on the wane, but the full-time component is back in vogue, at least for the month. Is that sustainable, and how concerned are you at the hourly rate falling?
Yeah, Carson, I think the full-time stat's a good one. You know, we're starting to head into what we would typically say is the uptick in the season in terms of the executive recruitment market, so that's good news. The hourly stat, that's an interesting one. You know, there's been a few comments made this time round about the ABS stats. How easy are the ABS stats to follow?
Yeah.
And I think that's an anomaly, that one. You know, I don't put too much attention onto it in terms of what we see in the exec market.
Philosophically, though, or at least on trend terms, when there's an overweight build into, in this instance, full-time for the month, would you expect there to be a moderation in hours worked? Because the part-time component you can see workers going above and beyond, given that they're not getting those other entitlements.
Yeah.
So the hours worked themselves might actually be more supported on a part-time push higher than a full-time as we saw this month.
Look, usually at this time of year there is a switch between what we refer to as contracting support in an organisation. New budgets are approved, people start to be able to get out there and hire on a permanent basis.
Financial year.
Exactly. So, you know, that's quite a natural part of the cycle to see that change.
A lot of the economists were making a bit about the change in the composition of the survey this time round, and perhaps the reason why the quarter cent and the dollar rally occurred is, yes, it was 8,000 a change, but if you made an adjustment for the change in composition, it might have even been higher again. But let's be honest about this. These stats are a chocolate wheel.
Yeah.
You've got to look at trend over time. It's showing full-time or overall employment growth about 2%, and that's a solid economy, if that's a fair reflection of what's happening out there.
On geographical boundaries and along those lines, concerns over the pullback in New South Wales? It's always been the kind of rock-solid lead driver for the rest of the nation. If that's staging a pullback, is that an early warning signal that other metrics could be also set to cool off?
Yeah, I picked up on that one as well, Carson. It is an interesting stat because New South Wales has definitely powered the talent market now for the past 12 to 18 months. It's a very important part of the resilience that we've got in the Australian talent market. We don't want to see New South Wales catch a cold. I wouldn't call it a trend yet. You know, it's just it's one set of data. So we've got to watch that carefully. These next 3 months really tell us what's going on. So July, August, September, October, that's the big season in terms of talent movement in the marketplace. So we'll have a pretty good idea on the trend, you know, towards the end of that period.
But what you really don't want is New South Wales and Victoria to catch a cold at the same time.
Spot on.
And the Victorian numbers were quite okay. So I would just say, okay, most probably a swallow. We'll see whether the summer comes along later on.
Well, speaking of which, summer and blighty, to use the cold analogy, I mean, when the UK currently sneezes, what's the degree of fallout here? Or actually, do we benefit at this point in the cycle from them sneezing? Are you looking to see some uplift, care of Brexit leakage coming this way? Investment banks, the like, bulking up here, the Northern Hemisphere?
We have a number of clients that have already launched fairly aggressive campaigns into the UK to extract talent.
Right.
You know, and over the last 2 years, it has been like pulling teeth because the economy's been good there. The return in sterling was pretty good as well. So Aussie and Kiwi talent not that interested in coming home. We're seeing a lot more inquiry from that market in terms of a return into either Sydney or Melbourne.
And are those clients indicating how much further sterling would need to fall to really give them more than just the hope, but the actual core belief there would be that migration?
The currency movement's one thing. The uncertainty around what an economic downturn could mean in terms of career over a 2 to 3 year period, that's probably the thing that's playing most on people's minds. And Sydney and Melbourne from afar, they look pretty consistent, you know, as talent markets. So, you know, people put that into their
calculations.
So is this just overall, or is it sector focus. So we've seen it more in financial market business because they're worried about London no longer being the financial centre of Europe, and they're looking for a plan B.
Tends to be services orientated. So financial services in that category, professional services in that category. That's often where if there's a shift between the UK and Australia, you can bag the talent and move it across.
It's becoming almost the popular belief that Europe, the more it's talked about, of course, it seems that there's almost an inevitability about it. But if Europe is said to be in a more serious situation collectively, are you seeing the same kind of opportunism on display with clients going the way of European markets to say, come back? This could all be, too rough and wild for your own good.
It does stay put. Doesn't work as well out of Europe because of the language, the language barriers. So you move into, in Aussie dollar terms, 150,000 north. The skill set and the capability built up in Sydney or London's probably the key thing.
Okay.
So yeah, that Sydney, London, special relationship. Melbourne, London, special relationship. Doesn't translate as well into Paris or Amsterdam.
How have you been, and how have clients been grappling with this dollar that's actually domestically remained quite well supported? It's not far off from the position that the RBA was forced to cut from at 77 a few months ago. Now, are offshore clients thinking twice about this market as it shows that renewed resilience, the A dollar?
Doing business here is expensive.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. So we're briefed on a lot of assignments where clients, in terms of how much they have to pay to get the right talent in Sydney or Melbourne, it really surprises them versus what they're looking at in the Asian markets or in the European markets.
What could we be doing differently on that score? What could we be, changing as far as work practices go that might just be enough to unlock that reticence?
Yeah, we've touched on it a couple of times, Carson. The mobility issue in Australia. So there's actually a lot of talent sitting in this market that's already calibrated in terms of living costs and what to expect. But we don't do a great job in terms of helping to mobilise that talent. So you take the Perth market at the moment. Some fantastic talent over there, but not a lot of support for a family to pick up, move from Perth, and establish themselves in Sydney or Melbourne. Now, I do sometimes wonder from a federal perspective, whether we're missing a trick there, in terms of mobilising Australian talent.
Do we have the increased challenge, particularly in financial services, though, that we're nearby to Singapore and Hong Kong in terms of time zones? So aren't they seriously considered competitors
for
that space?
Yeah, spot on. That's a long-term trend. That they've been pulling talent from Sydney and Melbourne into that market. There are a lot of people actually that we talk to who are commuting from here to those markets.
So this Mark Johnson dream of a serious degree of competition coming home to bear here as some kind of a counterweight to that. Do you think it's a pipe dream or?
I think it's got a long way to go.
Yeah, well, they would say, how many years have they been saying that now?
Yeah.
Since the Johnson report, yeah.
It needs multiple changes in terms of tax regimes and a lot of other things besides. It's a dream, but boy, it's aspirational in a big way.
Do you think he'll see it in his lifetime?
I think well, in my 20 years in playing in the sector, I haven't seen a dramatic shift, so I can't see it, Carson.
Good to talk. Not that that's an encouraging development, but great insights. Thank you so much.